This decision will end the patchwork system we currently have. It will end the uncertainty hundreds of thousands of same-sex couples face from not knowing whether their marriage, legitimate in the eyes of one state, will remain if they decide to move or even visit another. This ruling will strengthen all of our communities by offering to all loving same-sex couples the dignity of marriage across this great land.
All right, folks, welcome to hour number 2, Friday edition, Steve Malzberg Show. And by now you know it was a 5-4 decision. 1-2 punch yesterday and today. Big news, and joining us, I'm very happy to say once again, making time for us, is the great Alan Dershowitz, legendary Harvard Law School professor, Newsmax contributor, author of Terror Tunnels, The Case for Israel's Just War Against Hamas. And Alan, here we go again. So were you surprised by this one?
Oh, no, I wasn't surprised. What surprises me is that President Obama has taken any credit for this. I mean, he ran twice against gay marriage, and only when he was not running for re-election and when the polls showed that the vast majority of Americans supported gay marriage did he have the courage of his convictions to come out and support it. So it takes a little bit of chutzpah for him to get on the radio and claim some credit for this result. His Justice Department supported it, but for years they did not support it. But, you know, that's true of most politicians. They blow with the wind, and this was something that was inevitable. Even if the Supreme Court had not ruled in favor of gay marriage, within 5 or 10 years, every state would have legislated gay marriage because it's the trend. And so the question really is this the role of the courts or is this the role of the legislature? This was inevitable. It was going to happen. But is it better to come from the judiciary or is it better to come from the people? And that's an argument that reasonable people can disagree about.
Well, Justice Roberts brought that up and said that it's going to be tainted in the minds of some Americans because he believes it is the role of the legislatures and around the country and not 5 justices on the Supreme Court.
Well, he's right. I mean, it's much better for it to come from the people. I think also Roe versus Wade, it would have been much better if the right of a woman to choose an abortion came from legislatures instead of from on high. You know, if you asked the framers of our Constitution 225 years ago, they would have laughed at you. Thomas Jefferson thought the gay people should get the death penalty. If you ask any justice of the Supreme Court 20 years from now, they would have laughed at you. 50 years ago, if a lawyer had raised this question, he probably would have been subject to sanctions. This is the quickest turnaround ever in constitutional history. Within one generation, it turned from being gay and acting on it to being a felony, as it was in Georgia under the Bowers versus Hartwick case, to being a constitutional right of marriage just one generation later. It's the fastest turnaround, and it's a great victory for those of us who realize that we have a living Constitution, that you can't treat the Constitution as if the words were there to be interpreted as they were intended back in the 1800s. So it is a vindication for the living Constitution approach rather than what Justice Scalia calls the dead Constitution approach.
Well, let's look at we'll put up on the screen. You can't see it, but I'll read it to you, what Justice Scalia had to say in his dissent. I write separately to call attention to this court's threat to American democracy. The practice of constitutional revision by an unelected committee of 9, always accompanied, as it is today, by extravagant praise of liberty, robs the people of the most important liberty they asserted in the Declaration of Independence and won in the Revolution of 1776, the freedom to govern themselves.
Well, you could make the same argument about his decision and his support for the right to own private guns under the Second Amendment. The framers certainly didn't have that in mind either, but he interpreted the Constitution in that case consistent with his own view rather than with the view of the framers. And so all the justices play this game, and they all go back to the Founding Fathers when the Founding Fathers support their politics, and they all figure out ways of getting around the Founding Fathers when the Founding Fathers don't support their politics. You know, if you stick to the dead letter of the Constitution, the 14th Amendment couldn't possibly mean desegregated schools. I don't think there would be a single vote in Congress or among the states in the middle of the 1860s for integrated education. there certainly wouldn't have been any votes for marriage between blacks and whites. Those are things that have changed over time, and so we've interpreted the Constitution differently over time.
All right, Alan,
And
I'm sorry, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Let me take it to another level here, and the religious liberty and religious freedom. Nothing in here specifically, I don't believe, addresses. They do say you need to respect the rights of those who have religious objections, but there's nothing that exclusively addresses that people will not have to perform gay marriages, I don't believe. But Samuel Alito says, I assume that those who cling to old beliefs will be able to whisper their thoughts in the recesses of their homes, but if they repeat those views in public, they will risk being labeled as bigots and treated as such by governments, employers, and schools. Is he right?
He's partly right. He's partly right and he's partly wrong. Anybody can express any views they want about gay marriage, and anybody can call anybody they want a bigot. That's America. The marketplace of ideas is wide open. The same thing you could say about integrated education, or the Confederate flag. Today, people who want to fly the Confederate flag are regarded as bigots. I have a right to call them a bigot, and they have a right to fly the flag. And somebody else has a right to say they're not bigots. They're just supporting Robert E. Lee and the Confederacy, and Robert E. Lee was a nice man. So, the marketplace of ideas is wide open. Justice Scalia is wrong if he thinks that you have to whisper about gay marriage. Well,
that's Alito. That was Alito, not Scalia, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Alito is wrong when he says that. Also, no priest is going to have to marry two men. No rabbi is going to have to marry two men. Nobody is going to have to violate their religious rights. I mean, people who say that they have a religious right not to sell flowers to gay people, that's absurd. There's no religion that says you can't sell flowers to gay people or you can't cater their wedding, but you can't be forced to perform a rabbinical or priestly function. So, we try very hard to balance liberty, equality, religious freedom, religious views, and it's a work in progress. It's never perfect, but I think we're getting it right for the most part. And what we're saying is the government is not going to fly Confederate flags. The government is going to allow gay marriage, but individuals have a right to marry who they want. They have a right to express any view they want on gay marriage. They have a right to express any view they want on the Confederate flag. That's the way America is, and that's not a bad thing.
Let me ask you one more, and then I'll let you go. I think he brings up a very important, and maybe there's a distinction here. Let's talk about religion. I think it was Samuel Alito who asked in the oral arguments of this case, what happens if we pass this the way you want it? He said it to the side that actually won, and then from the pulpit, people preach about the sanctity of marriage, and marriage is defined as one man, one woman in the text that they believe in, and in the church that they attend or wherever they attend religiously. Will the government then look to take away their tax-exempt status? Will there be a tax on? And the answer from the attorney at that point, which is not binding by any means, said that remains to be seen. And I think
it doesn't remain to be seen. I can give you a 100% guarantee that it would be unconstitutional to take away the tax deduction from a church, a synagogue, a mosque whose imam or rabbi or priest advocated gay marriage. That's a red herring. There is an
you mean who advocated traditional marriage?
Against anything. You can advocate polygamy. You can advocate anything you want from the pulpit. There's a great letter, I own the letter, from Thomas Jefferson, written to a minister back in 1800, in which Jefferson basically says ministers can preach whatever they want, even if what they preach may cause violence. That's sacred under our Constitution, the right to preach in the synagogue, in the mosque, and in the church.
I hope you are right, Alan. And Alan, thank you.
I am right.
Thank you.
I am right.
No, I'm sure you are, but I hope that the climate doesn't change and proves you wrong in the end. Thank you very much, sir. Always appreciate it.
I appreciate that.
Take care.
Thank you.
Alan Dershowitz, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget his book, Terror Tunnels, The Case for Israel's Just War Against Hamas. We're coming back. Brent Badowski from The Hill. This should be fun.